OK, time now to look ahead to tomorrow's Rugby Union World Cup final between England and New Zealand. We're going to break down this game now with former England prop and World Cup winner Sasha Acheson. Sasha, great to have you with us on the sofa this morning. So good to see you. Now England, they go into this match undefeated in their last 30. It is utterly remarkable. What has made this side just so, well, impossible really to beat?
Well, I mean, their tenacious attitude, and actually it's their passion and desire that's come through every single step, but also they've been really able to look at their vulnerabilities and be able to reflect on them and act on them in a way that I don't think has happened quite as clinically before. England as well, they are professional, so that makes a huge difference. But I think the other side of it is that England is now quite an all-encompassing camp to be in. So in terms of like the mental health support that they've got there, the psychological support that they've got going, as well as everything else in terms of fitness, in terms of rehab, in terms of actually knowing when to rest and when to train and when to do contact and everything else. Like, England have really got their stuff together, and actually not just that, but the actual team building and vibe in the camp is phenomenal, and I think that speaks volumes, and it shows how incredible these girls are and what they've managed to achieve.
Well, it is incredible because undefeated in the last 30.
Yeah.
Can they make it 31?
Oh, we all hope so, don't we? I think, but what more of a, what more of a Disney scenario is there really? Like, I think, yeah, they're playing New Zealand, who are the current, obviously, World Cup champions in New Zealand. And New Zealand have never lost a World Cup final when they've been in one. So I think it's all to play for, isn't it, really? I think you can't really get anything more exciting or close. And I think, yeah, tomorrow morning is going to be a stellar morning of rugby, frankly.
There is a lot of history as well, isn't there, between these two sides? It's such a long-established rivalry. In fact, the last team to beat England before they went on this 30-match winning streak was New Zealand. And in the past, I think 15 times they've played, it's 7 apiece with 1 draw. I mean, knowing that the last team they lost to was the Black Ferns, will that be playing on the mind of these England players? And how will they deal with that? Will it give them more fight?
I don't actually think it will be, because it was so long ago, and actually you're only as good as your last game. I think that's always the attitude that was always inherently drilled into everybody. But also this isn't an arrogant England side. They're not going to go with the attitude, and they haven't in any of the games that they've played recently. They haven't gone with the attitude of, we're undefeated, we've got all of these games. I know the social media has hyped it up and everything, which is fantastic, but that's not where the players' heads are at. They're like, right, this is the next game to focus on. And I think that they'll go into this New Zealand game with exactly the same attitude. And if anything, they'll go with even more ferocity and fight, because of the fact that they're playing in a sellout crowd. It's going to make history. And actually, this is the biggest stage that you can play on, and it's the biggest event you can ever play in. It's a World Cup final. So nobody's going to be turning up to this game with any preconceived ideas or notions of what the outcome's going to be. It's all to play for.
You know what it's like to play for England, so what do they need to do to come out on top tomorrow?
I think, honestly, it's going to be who can perform under pressure the best. I think it's going to be who's going to let it get to them, because both of these sides are so profound, and actually they both have got their own unique styles of play, and in terms of the way that they're playing is just so physical but equally so fast and creative. So I think what it will come down to is patience and mentality, and actually England proved against Canada their defence was relentless. So I think in terms of what they need to do against the Black Ferns, it's going to be not letting that home advantage really get to them, or the sellout crowd, and actually thrive on it, and I truly believe that they can.
You talked a bit about the psychologists coming in and working, which is quite new. Do you think that will help with the mentality, which you say is so key for this game?
Hugely. I mean, so, as a rugby player, you live, eat and breathe rugby, so I think anything that can give you that edge is really important. And not just that, it's actually, a side of the game that's not been looked at, and mental health is so important, like so important. And I think the amount of, these women have got a much longer turnaround than they previously did. It used to be 4 days between World Cup matches. I mean, World Cups in time gone by would be over by now, but actually, they've had a good amount of time. They've had 6 or 7 days between matches now, which has given them time to recover, time to be with their family, and time to just be human, like have that humanity element that they need. They're not machines, even though they look like it. So I think the psychologist will be putting them in different scenarios, especially those key players, of saying, look, okay, it's down to the wire, what are you going to do, how are you going to respond, what are you going to focus on when the crowd's roaring. Being able to role play through all those scenarios will really help, and I think, yeah, England have got all the tools in the toolbox.
Speaking of key players, who are the matchups and the pairings actually that we should be looking at? Because this England team is stacked full of talent, but who are going to be the difference makers? I
think that's a really interesting question, because I think, you know, all the way through to the starters and finishers, actually in any other team they would be, you know, starting players, and even the players not mentioned in this game, and the ones that are injured and the ones that didn't even get picked in other nations actually would be starting players. But I think ones to watch that will be really interesting, and I actually think it's a really interesting decision from Simon Middleton, is at Holly Acheson with Emily Scarrett. I think that's going to be a really interesting matching, because both of them are real distributors. Holly Acheson, obviously she's been covering at 10 as well, so the fact that she's now playing inside centre actually offers something different, and, you know, gives another first receiver out in the middle of the field. So I think that suggests that England want to play a wide game, but also both of these athletes are incredibly quick. They've both done sevens. I think the battle of the backs in this game is going to be huge, and these two are going to make a real difference to see how that kind of fares up. Holly's obviously got that link with Zoe, and very familiar with playing with Zoe at club level. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting how that ball's distributed, and we've also got our supersonic wingers that have been pulling blinders all throughout this tournament.
You picked another pairing as well that you think are going to be key for this one, didn't you?
Yes, yeah, I did. So we've got Marley Packer and Sarah Byrne. So both of these players are really fiery players and very passionate players. Sarah is as dynamic as they come for the front row. Not even for the front row. I hate, as a former front row, I hate that. So Sarah is unbelievably quick. She's very powerful, and she's not someone that you'd want to have running into you at all. She also is incredibly hard hitting, and Marley is much the same, but Marley is also incredibly motivating. And you know, Marley captained one of the games in this World Cup, and it led them to success as well. And she is such a voice of, you know, hearts on fire, head on ice, and that's Marley all over. So these two are going to be real key players to watch in that forward pack.
I think Marley also wins on facials as well, doesn't she?
Marley always wins.
It's a great shot, isn't it?
Yeah.
Look, you know, England have been here before. They've won World Cups before. When you look at the year in women's sport, what the Lionesses did in this summer, I mean, what does this moment feel like, and just how incredible would it be if England can get the business done and set that standard ahead of the men's World Cup next year?
Well, I think there's a lot to be said for that. So, you know, it's got to be mentioned that All Blacks had a massive timing mess up, and they put one of the men's fixtures at the exact same time as the women's fixture. And actually the thing that's incredible is that the women's fixture got more viewings, it got more ratings, viewings, everything. And I think this is a really empowered time for women's sport, as you say, because actually it's causing this just wave of excitement throughout every nation. And I think the fact that there's a big time difference here in England to the World Cup in New Zealand, but the amount of kind of trajectory that actually, and momentum that this World Cup is getting is phenomenal. I think if we were able to win with the Lionesses, which we're more than capable of doing, that would be absolutely massive for women's sport. And actually we're paving the way of being, like, women's sport should be taken seriously, and it's about time it was. And I think Sarah Hunter made a really good point. You know, Canada, there was only a score in it in the semi-finals. It was an amazing game, but they're not professional, they're not paid, and it's about time that women start to get recognised and supported. And imagine if Canada had been backed up by their nation, it had been a fully funded programme. Like, that was already a score in it game. So I think, yeah, I think all that anyone's trying to do, and both teams, no matter who wins, is inspire the next generation. And as Ruby Tui said, you know, 10 years ago, they were told that New Zealand couldn't play in the World Cup final, women's rugby shouldn't exist, that, you know, it definitely wouldn't play at Eden Park. And now look at them, they've got a sell-out crowd, they're having to try and build more stands to see if they can sell more tickets. Because there's such a demand for it, and they're playing in a World Cup final as professional athletes. So 12 years on, it just shows how fast this game's growing.
Yeah,
it certainly
absolutely.
Does. Like you said, the whole tournament's been a great advert for women's rugby, and we are so looking forward to the final. England winning it?
I hope so.
Sasha, thank you so much. It's been great.
Thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.